Welcome to the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning, and I hope everyone had a happy Labor Day here in the U.S.
Yeah, we certainly did. We were at a staycation here at the five-star Phoenician Resort with three granddaughters, and I survived.
Yeah, three granddaughters, that'll wear you out.
It could, yes, but the pool helped out, kept them occupied, and they have events there, like a donut making thing where they all got donuts they could decorate, and a lot of sprinkles, a lot of sugar involved, of course.
Of course.
But yeah, it was very enjoyable, and like Mark says, we hope that yours was fun and eventful as well. Had a good family time. One of the things that we were going to lead with after we discussed the image behind us, which of course is always artificial intelligence. This one was a space age news studio, and we'd love to hear from you guys. If you want to see something else in the background at some point, let us know what that is, and we may just do that.
Do you think that's a fusion reactor there in the background?
It sure looks like it. That bright light, yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit about fusion later on and some of its history. One of the things we wanted to lead with was there's a lot of talk about Lucid. In fact, so much so, we actually did a video. And we're getting ready to do another one on the EV industry. We won't tell you who that manufacturer is, but it's going to be another one of those deep dive financial reveals that we think will be entertaining and educational. But in the meantime, the question was asked, a lot of automakers are choosing to use Tesla's NACS charging plug for their vehicles. Will Lucid do the same? And this question was posed to Lucid, and this is Peter Rawlinson's response. Peter, of course, is the CEO of Lucid. He says, "We are very open-minded. We consider everything. I am a proponent of having a unified standard, but it has to be future-proof. That means it should be high voltage, 1,000 volts. The lion's share of Tesla grid today is not high voltage. If the U.S. public is going to pay with tax dollars, we should have a standard. And I am fine with the NACS plug. I led the team that designed that plug when I was at Tesla." So Mark did a little bit more research, and we think that there may be some other compelling reasons beside the one just presented that might play into this.
Oh, by all means. Carscoops.com had a really good article on this. And first, you know what? Before I get into that, I just got to take a little rabbit hole sidebar here. Do you know how much Peter Rawlinson is reported to have made this last year? Actually,
I do. $379 million per year this last year.
That's so insane. For a company that has in the first half of this year about $600 million in revenue total. For the CEO to be paid $379 million of that, that left me scratching my head. So we had to look, is that a yearly salary, or is this a one-time thing? And as far as I can find, that salary is a one-time salary. It looks like Peter Rawlinson leveraged a bunch of stock options that he may have had when Lucid put out its Series B funding round this spring and raised an additional $3 billion in funding.
So just to put that in perspective, I knew a guy when I worked at Digital that was also eligible for stock options, and it was usually upper management that was eligible. The bottom line is there is an expiration date to stock options, and if you don't exercise your option.
Yes.
So Peter didn't have a choice about this.
That's exactly right. It's likely that he was being put into a place where he was either going to exercise the option or he was going to lose the option.
Right.
The other big thing about that is those stock options have a fixed price for the stock when the option is presented. So it may be that Peter was given an option to buy shares of Lucid stock maybe at $1 a share. Or something like that, not market value. So the day he bought those shares, he got 5 times the amount of money that as income, quote unquote, as what it is that he actually had to spend to buy the shares.
Right.
But just a couple of fun facts that Richard put out for us. At $379 million, roughly, that's about $182,000 a day of salary.
No, an hour.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. An hour.
An hour. Yeah, because we talk about hourly wage, you know.
That's right. That's right. It was an hour. Well, it's about $50.60 per second. So one of something that I had heard in years past is there's going to be a time when you're talking to the richest people in the world and the money that they make, and it costs them more money to stop if they're walking down the sidewalk and pick up and they see $100 bill than it would for them to just keep walking. Peter Rawlinson has just entered that category. The 3 seconds that it would take him to stop, stoop down, pick up $100 bill, put it in his pocket, and move on would cost him $150. So that means it would cost him more money to stop than it would to just keep walking.
So, Peter, our advice to you, although finding a $100 bill is not frequent, we understand that. Just don't stoop to pick it up. Just
That's
leave
right.
it on
Just
the
keep
ground.
walking. So, anyway,
but you know, we have to put this in perspective. We are pro-Lucid because there's so much misinformation that is floating out there, and that's one of the reasons we did that video about 3 weeks ago or so, to provide a fresher perspective with some deeper financial analysis. You know, the doomsayers were having their time, and so anyway, we did want to insert, though, that kind of wage because it does come up at times, especially when we talk about the unions trying to squeeze more money from the incumbent auto manufacturers, and how that may be counterproductive at this point because they're trying to survive, folks, you know?
Right.
Saddling them with more cost is, that could be dangerous.
Well, even with what's going on with some of the traditional automakers right now and the fact that the unions might be choosing to go on strike within another 10 days or so, it's the same type of thing. Even the traditional automakers are struggling to make ends meet or to get to break even with their EVs. And now you've got the unions coming back and saying, well, you have to hire more of us to work on these EVs. Well, why? Because building EVs is too simple. There aren't enough people to, you're not employing enough people to build these electric vehicles, but they're employing as many as they need.
Yeah.
And so there's all kinds of weird politics going on there. But for Lucid, my take on this question and answer. Car Scoops had a lot of good information, and there were a few different publications that were put out articles around the 4th of July Independence Day. And Peter did have definitely a significant input into the design of what we now know as the NACS plug. I did read that article on Car Scoops. It indicates that Peter's main concern, though, might not be as much about high voltage as about a couple of other things. Multiple publications reported in July that Peter's concern about the charging standard wasn't about high voltage because he actually said if you're driving an EV, you're going to be more concerned about the environment. If you're more concerned about the environment, then you're going to be concerned about charging at non-peak times. If you're charging at non-peak times, i.e. overnight, who cares about high voltage supercharging?
Right.
Why all the emphasis on high voltage supercharging? Now, this is Peter Rawlinson asking this question. So now for him to come back and talk about 1,000-volt charging capability is a little bit of a red herring, in my opinion. Instead, he talks about the access to the consumer data that whatever company owns the NACS standard, he will not name Tesla in this, but he does say it that way, that is much more of a concern because the company who owns the charging station that the car plugs into is going to have access to said car and to the data that that car generates when the car plugs in and communicates with the mothership to say, I'm here, I'm ready to charge. There's nothing to stop them from inquiring about things such as driving habits, distance driven, last time they may have supercharged, or about the technology of the car itself.
Hmm.
And Lucid says, we have to protect our technology. We know we have right now the most advanced and best technology on the EV market. And if a different company just decides to try to grab a bunch of our technology every time somebody plugs in to charge, they could do it absent any regulation.
Hmm.
So he acknowledges then that Lucid probably will adopt the standard at some point in time. But that standard adoption is likely not going to happen until after the SAE has finished the universal standard, which will also include management of data and whether or not this data is going to be open source.
So, as much as I hate the term regulation, it sounds like there might be a beneficial aspect involved in some regulation with this charging standard.
Yeah, it looks like there might be.
Interesting. Well, thank you.
Mark,
bet.
I got a question on that.
Yeah, Richard.
So, being a software guy, wouldn't there be some sort of system that could be put in place to prevent additional data being taken from the car and plugged into the supercharger or what have you that they're concerned about? Aren't there some sorts of safeties that could be put in place to prevent that?
Oh, there definitely are safety systems that could be put into place to do that. The question at hand is the whole unintended consequence argument. When Lucid developed their car, they had no intention of having the chance to put their car onto the Tesla standard because at the time, the Tesla standard wasn't an open standard. So there is an unintended consequence of Tesla going out and saying, hey, we're going to open everything up to everybody. And now Lucid says, oh, wait a minute. We haven't put the security in place in our cars. We might have to do some significant rewrites of our systems in order to be able to do that. Until the standards body, Society of Automotive Engineers, or SAE, comes out with the standard and how this communication is supposed to work, we don't know how to write said safety protocols.
Good point.
Awesome. No, that makes sense. I did want to ask you gentlemen if you heard what Elon had to say about the whole Peter Rawlinson 379 million bit.
I did hear a little bit.
He was probably envious because, according to legend, he doesn't take a salary. He's able to borrow against his equity.
Yeah, he had a one-word post on X.
Well,
wow.
it grew at some point. He said, beware of any company where leadership compensation is not linked to performance. And he left it at that. So envy or any of that, maybe. Who knows? But
hard to tell.
Yeah.
Hard to tell.
Well, folks, we have a lot of questions coming in. Let's handle a few of them here. Instagram. Karthik_RVK_ready says, hi, guys from India. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
Instagram, Mustafaber313 says, this country is Morocco. Morocco is the best in the world. Okay. Never been there, but maybe it is. It sounds like a place to go.
Good evening to you. And, my father was in the Peace Corps in Morocco back in the mid-1960s.
Is that right?
He said it was a fascinating place and he loved the people there.
Interesting. More international audience. Instagram, Kuba_Rachval says, hello from Poland. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening.
Instagram, Ermars_8055 says hello. And YouTube, Richard Flintke is back with us. Welcome, Richard. He says, Musk wrote, yeah, well, there you go. Beware of any company where leadership compensation is not linked to performance. That's did you get that from that post because you typed it in?
No, actually I did not. I just copied and pasted his in, and I had it up on. It popped up on my news feed earlier today.
Oh, okay. On YouTube, Tay Barrera says Rawlinson seems to have animosity toward Tesla in management. Now, haven't you said, Pete, in the past that Peter Rawlinson and Tesla management and all things Tesla, they did not get along very well right now?
Well, yeah, and I'm sure at the time he worked there, he was a much appreciated engineer and, upper management. But since then, there have been some comments made and some allegations thrown that he was not integral and he was not an important cog in that wheel or that machine. And, when these kinds of statements are made, pride gets involved and human emotion gets involved. And oftentimes there's a bit of damage that's done there. But yes, for those of you curious, all you have to do is Google it. Look at some of the interviews with both parties, Elon and Peter Rawlinson, and you'll see that there are a few barbs being thrown back and forth. Instagram, Ian Caldwell, welcome. He says, hey, from Ireland.
Good afternoon and welcome. Glad to have you back.
Pete, I got a question for you real quick. On the charging part with the 1,000 volts, would Tesla have to redo their whole infrastructure? Are they... What exactly means they're not capable of doing that 100 volt or 1,000 volt, right now?
Well, the charging plug could remain the same. And I can't say that for certainty because there may be, dielectric properties or safety issues with pumping twice the voltage through a plug like that. But from what I understand, that plug is capable of doing 1,000 volts. The advantage to using 1,000 volts is that the charge cable now no longer looks like a garden hose. It's going to be a bit easier to manage because the reciprocal relationship between voltage and current is every time you double the voltage, your current goes to half. And current is what makes wire sizes and circuit breaker sizes and transformer sizes and all that. So yeah, it's I think it's capable of it, but would their infrastructure go through a major retrofit? Probably not, because if you can use the existing stalls, the existing cables, then the changes would be made in the utility room at the superchargers.
Yeah, so that just speaks more towards Mark's point of that's probably not the issue then. If they could just, at some point, if Tesla could enable that pretty easily in the future, it doesn't make sense that he would have that as the reason why he wouldn't go.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and we've even talked about Tesla in Europe, especially I think in the UK is where it was. They're testing out version 4 of their superchargers, and the version 4 supercharger is a 1,000 volt enabled supercharger. So they're already talking about Tesla's got that in testing over in Europe already. So it's the whole 1,000 volt argument is not, again, I think it's a red herring.
Yeah. And, data mining is definitely a huge concern because if you think about what the data could be used for, profiling, vehicle owners, and if that type of information is readily available, where's the car been? How long does it spend at a restaurant? What type of restaurant? That type of information can be sold. And of course, people or companies will pay lots of money to get a profile list to help them target their advertising.
When is the last time that you or any of you guys in here went onto Facebook right after mentioning something, only to have an ad for that very thing come up on your phone?
Yep.
There you
Literally
go.
every day.
Yeah.
Literally
day is right.
every single day.
Even scary when you think it.
Yeah, and there's
100%.
Marketers pay big money for that kind of stuff, and what's to say you don't have an ad? That there's a Johnny Rockets by the Tesla supercharger nearest to us, and if you started to have an ad pop up on your phone as you look at your phone while you're supercharging about Johnny Rockets, oh my gosh! But that's going to happen.
See, I still want to know how it's legal for those who mine this type of data, companies and whatnot, to sell it.
Well, it's an absence of regulation at this point. That would be my guess. And of course, it's coming.
It's coming. It's Europe is ahead of the United States for privacy laws, but I think it's going to be coming to the United States as well.
Another thing that might happen if that doesn't happen, those privacy laws, you might be supercharging your Tesla, and then it just decides, hey, we're going to go to Johnny Rockets.
Right.
I know you want it.
Yeah.
I know that you
Full
want it.
self-driving,
And then
yeah.
it's just going to take you right there.
Or present you a coupon that it's 30% off at Johnny Rockets because it knows.
Yeah, absolutely. YouTube, Mark James has one more comment for us. First, welcome, Mark. He says, NACS is the future. But I'm guessing this is an incredibly difficult pill for him, Peter, I believe he says, to swallow.
But guys, in just an additional comment on that, although that would be highly likely if the only two people involved were Elon and Peter. Remember, these organizations are filled with legions of competent people that are making sound decisions in the best interest of the shareholders and the owners. So I can't imagine that those base human emotions are going to prevent something as sizable as this.
Yeah, I think it's going to come at some point in time, just because you've got SAE building that standard out now, and there's such momentum toward it. And even Peter admits the supercharger network is a superior network. It has a superior plug.
Mm-hmm. YouTube, Brian Silver says, read your terms of use agreement. Good point.
Yeah, very good point.
So one of the things we thought we would continue with was something we started last week, which was what are the 10 major breakthroughs that Tesla has reshaped the automotive industry with? And I'll go through the 4 or 5 that we've already covered quickly and then get into some that we didn't. The first one that we talked about was that Tesla has managed to bring EVs to the mainstream before anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, GM with their EV1 certainly could have been the first one, but blew it completely and let it go dormant for years again until Tesla came along. 2, Tesla has sped up mass EV adoption. And again, the comment last week was, if someone told you in 2008 that in 15 years, the world's best-selling vehicle would be an electric Tesla, you would have laughed at them. I would have. I had my Tesla Roadster.
I would have, totally.
You know, people didn't know what an electric car was back then. They knew what a Prius was, and they understood the hybrid concept a bit, but they certainly didn't understand 100% BEV.
You'd have said this startup motor company that's constantly on the verge of bankruptcy is actually going to be selling more cars than anybody else? I don't think so.
Can't happen. And yeah, that's exactly what did happen. The Model Y is now the highest selling EV in the world. And of course, again, it says there were EVs even before Tesla merged, but none of them made the mark in the industry with until the Model S came along and the more affordable Model 3 and the Model Y arrived.
Mm-hmm.
The third one was it has greatly enhanced the EV charging infrastructure. We talked about that. Tesla realized early on that the biggest barrier to EV adoption would be the fueling aspect, that you could only go a couple, 300 miles, and then you're going to struggle with range anxiety. How are you going to go on vacation? So at their own expense, and remember, they were not a cash-rich company back then, they realized they're going to have to begin to invest and spend money basically they don't have to develop a charging infrastructure. And they've done something that had never been done before. I don't know what the stats are these days, but the number of charging stations around the world that are Tesla type are above 10,000, I think 13,000.
Oh, yeah. I think they're up in charging stations. They're not getting too far away from 10,000 just here in the United States now.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, with the adoption of the NACS standard, you have all these other companies that are jumping on the bandwagon to participate in the charging revenue stream.
Right.
And Pete, just a correction real quick.
Yeah.
You had mentioned the Model Y is the best-selling EV in the world. It's the best-selling car in the world. Just out of any car. It's the first EV ever to become the best-selling car in the world for the first quarter of this year.
Good point. Good point. Yeah, and who would have thought that in 2013, 14, 15?
Mark James also made that comment on YouTube as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mark. The fourth one was, one more thing before we move on from this charging system. The second big fear was, well, the grid's going to collapse. The electrical, the utilities won't be able to keep up with this kind of EV adoption rate. And like we've pointed out on our YouTube channel, we have a video that required a lot of research to verify or dispute this claim. And we found out that the utilities are keeping up. There are a lot of solid plans to continue to expand. And for those of you that have been around a while, the problems in California with the rolling brownouts seem to have dissipated a bit as well. And that was the most vulnerable state regarding inadequate grid.
Yeah, it was. And the biggest risk to the grid today, from what I've been able to see and hear about, actually is the high voltage lines and the construction of said high voltage lines. And it is the very people who would be most likely to advocate electric vehicles, those who are concerned about the environment, that are pushing against the development of more high voltage lines. Just kind of crazy to
There's
me.
an irony there, isn't there?
Yes.
The fourth item was it has popularized over-the-air updates. You know, the traditional method of getting your car to a service organization if there was a recall was you had to literally drive it there, get a loaner, get a replacement vehicle, and it was very intrusive, time-consuming, and it was a hassle. What Tesla had begun to do was to popularize the recall repairs over the air, if possible. Obviously, you're not going to change the brake pads over the air, but you're certainly going to be able to do certain types of upgrades with as much software that runs in these cars and firmware.
And when the car is as software heavy as it is truly a computer on wheels. A lot of times these recalls are nothing more than software bugs. And so there is no need to recall the cars.
And of course, the savings to the manufacturer that has this capability was enormous.
Yeah.
You know, you see some of these recalls, 120,000 cars are recalled. It's a staggering expense. In downtime, it clogs up their service centers. It makes it more difficult for the other repairs to get inserted in queue. So major change there, and Tesla really did pioneer that. Got a bunch of questions here. Maybe we should entertain those.
Yeah, let's do some of those. Ray in LA was talking about Lucid, saying, so Lucid is being stubborn. Okay.
YouTube, Niles is back with us from Denmark. He says, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Niles. Mark James on YouTube had said that the Model Y is the best-selling car of any kind, not the EV.
Right.
And then ma.ged8020 on Instagram. It says, hello, Majed live in, it says DZFOL, and I'm not sure what that where that place is.
That is as typed.
That is as typed. Okay.
Right.
Well, good afternoon to you. I have a feeling that you're not coming in from the United States. So Instagram, Tasdeek786 says hello.
And then YouTube, T. Barrera says, 5, they revolutionized the manufacturing process. Yeah, that's not on our list here, but it definitely adds to that. We have a number of advances that Tesla has begun to insert in the auto manufacturing process. Although, having said that, there was a period during the Model 3 launch when there were too many robots involved. And at that point, Elon admitted you can over-robotize, or however he phrased it.
Yeah, over-automate. You know, his point, though, is really salient because, like we were talking about just a couple of minutes ago, the United Auto Workers here in the United States are possibly going to be going on strike on September 14th against all of the big 3 U.S. automakers, Ford, Chevy, and Chrysler Dodge. And they're going to do it all at once. And one of their main contention points is that the manufacturing process has changed and it doesn't take as many people to build cars anymore. And this is especially true for the electric vehicles. That's a big sticking point with the UAW, which as I read that, and every time I repeat it, I'm thinking, these guys are nuts.
Yeah, timing is awful. It's like Hollywood. The script writers go on strike. Bring in ChatGPT 4.
Yeah.
Solved, you know. All right. Good. Oh, we've got an Instagram. Slangway_4. Good evening from Germany. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us. YouTube, Thomas Wilson, he says, not being able to use Tesla supercharger is a big issue. Since other brands cannot use Tesla superchargers, less incentive to use a non-Tesla supercharger.
You know, that's going to be a big sea change that comes about as the Tesla superchargers, because they are so much more reliable than the others on the planet. It's going to really drive expense of those people, and I am talking to you, Electrify America, and your 70% availability.
Mm-hmm.
When you've got somebody who's 99.95%, they've just raised the bar for people like Electrify America or really any of the other charging networks, because the overall average for charging networks is between 80 to 85%.
Mm-hmm.
And how many people who've driven electric cars have seen themselves get frustrated by taking a trip, going to a charger, finding out that most of the plugs, or in some cases all the plugs on that charger when they get there, are out of commission.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a huge problem. You've got these companies that are involved in nothing but charging, or their version of supercharging. They're trying to make money and survive.
Mm-hmm.
Tesla is trying to provide a quality product first, because they've got all the car revenue and profits to survive off of.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a really difficult role for some of these other charging companies.
It'll be a battle.
It will be.
Yeah. Richard Flinke with YouTube, he says, don't forget elimination of tailpipes. 1.2 billion autos are pumping poisons out 24 hours, 7 days a week. Good point,
That
Richard.
is a good point.
And for those of you that remember our COVID experience, I was amazed. In my backyard, which has a little elevation, I'm able to see Phoenix. And for the first time since I've lived here, since 1975, the air was clear and I could see South Mountain when the cars were off the road.
That was amazing to see.
Pete's new laser vision.
Yeah, that also helped, or that would help now.
That really was amazing to see. I've been here since 1985. I can remember I love to do cycling as a side hobby. And all those years ago in the late 80s and early 90s, I still remember not being able to ride up and down 7th Street on my bicycle because it was a high pollution day. And we didn't care. We were going to go out anyway. Our lungs started burning within a couple miles. We're like, that high pollution thing is a real thing. We probably better head home. Not only were we having a hard time seeing the top of the Tapateo Cliffs area from down at 7th Street and Cave Creek Road, just a couple miles south, it was just nasty outside.
Yeah. Well, you hit the nail on the head. What's it doing to our bodies,
Yeah.
YouTube, T. Barrera says, software upgrades and diagnosis were performed in the trucking industry back in the 90s, and Tesla took it further. Interesting. YouTube, Bingo James, aloha from Hawaii. Welcome. Hawaii, what are your thoughts from a change of perspective on their dealer support sales process? Oh, I love this one.
Yeah.
Elon nailed it correctly when he said, I can't imagine that the existing network of car dealers in the United States is going to do anywhere near a decent job of selling our electric vehicles, because it requires a different sales tactic. It requires training themselves, educating themselves, and their commissioned salespeople. They're going to go back to what makes money for them the easiest, instead of spending the time to learn how to sell an EV. And then, of course, you have some polarization there, one against the other. How will these people handle it? And I think he nailed it. He said they're not going to do a very good job. So our only chance of selling our Tesla vehicles is to do it ourselves and develop our own sales channel, our own sales network.
The very things that I think that Tesla and Elon were worried about are things that are happening right now with dealers such as Ford. I'm going to use Ford as my example. So you've got a dealer that decides they're going to go all in on EVs. The first problem now is that Ford is going to start pushing EVs on this dealer, whether the dealer wants it or not, because the manufacturer isn't selling to the customers. The manufacturer is foisting them on their dealers. And that barrier between the manufacturer and the customer inherently means poorer customer service. Now you have a dealer who is he wants to sell EVs, or she, I'm not going to be sexist here. Maybe half of their salespeople don't want to sell EVs. And So the mandate may come down from the dealership that you have to sell X number of EVs, and the salespeople themselves are like, yeah, I know that as long as I make my nut, I'll sell what I'm comfortable with, which means I'm going to sell the internal combustion engine vehicles because I understand them, because I'm not bought into the idea of electric vehicles. And all of a sudden, the dealer what are they going to do? Wholesale change out their sales force, incur all that expense to do that? Or are they going to, because they're getting good sales dollars from the people that sell ICE vehicles, are they just going to shrug their shoulders and go forward? Those are the things that are happening in places like Ford dealerships today.
And then you have the other issue of lack of pricing controls. This is the reason that a Ford F-150 Lightning can cost you as much as $20,000 more to dealer.
Yes.
And, and then the final thing is, and I think that Elon would have thought of this, how many people like going to a car dealer and buying a car? It's probably ranks up there with a root canal at the dentist. Let's make a deal, and then they lock you in an office. Well, I'm going to go get the manager, and then the pressure starts, and then the hidden costs, the dealer markups, and it's we live in the information age. Most people buy things online these days. We like that kind of a process. It's hassle-free. Everybody pays the same price. And, you don't have to worry about going and sitting at a dealership. The other brilliant thing, while we're on the subject, that Tesla did, they decided, where are the people that are going to be able to afford our first passenger cars, the Model S? These were luxury cars. They're not going to be in South Phoenix. They are going to be in the upscale malls where the affluent people with disposable incomes go, and they spend a whole lot more time at the malls than they do at a car dealership. You go there once every 5 years when you want to buy a car. Most people go to the malls far more frequently. And you have showrooms, and you have beautiful presentations and no pressure sales. These people were educators. They would talk to people about what the cars are capable of doing. And the best part was, they would let people test drive the cars. And anybody that owns a Tesla, more than likely, first became convinced this was a car they wanted after a test drive.
Sure.
Not too many people will say, well, no, compared to that ICE vehicle, I really prefer that fossil fuel burner compared to this Tesla.
And you got to think, this is happening between 2008 and 2015 to start with. This is before Amazon had started to take over the world of e-commerce. This is when malls were a huge thing. High-end malls are still very much a thing, at least here in Arizona. And it was the thing to do. Go to the mall on the weekend, do your shopping, go get the things that you want to get. And Tesla would only go to the most affluent of those malls across the nation. And they weren't opening up sales offices. They were just opening up Tesla centers.
And having said that, it also speaks to the power of lobbyists. Do lobbyists really represent the population? Hell no. They represent who's paying them the most.
Right.
And despite most people, over 70%, who prefer to buy things online or direct, there are still states in this country that will not allow that process to occur, a manufacturer to sell direct to an end user, because of powerful lobbying by NADA. It speaks to the ridiculous power that lobbyists have amassed.
Yeah, that National Auto Dealers Association is such a powerful lobby. They resist the change, and yet now they're finding that they can't do that. We've talked about Tesla doing this end around in a couple of different places now. You've got Tesla's going into Indian tribes, sovereign nations that are not subject to state law, and so Tesla has dealership and service centers opening up in places such as New Mexico and New York, and now coming up in Connecticut, places where, honestly, in the Northeast, those are NADA strongholds where Tesla is at. So good on Tesla
Yeah, and
for
the
doing
fact
that.
that they have to do that is a travesty that continues. Eventually, these types of organizations like NATO will go away.
I think so.
Instagram, ma_ged8020 says, I'm in Iran. Well, welcome. You're quite a ways away as well. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good evening. YouTube, Mark James. We lived on 7th Avenue near Indian School. It was just a brown cloud every day after rush hour. Boy, I hear you there.
Mm-hmm.
We drove into Vegas during the lockdowns. It was incredibly clear. ICE has got to go now for health reasons.
Oh, totally. YouTube, Slangway, in Germany, he says, did you like the new concept e-muscle car from Dodge? Other thoughts? In my humble opinion, it's so impressive. You know, I'm a Mopar guy. I don't know if those of you that are out there know this. I restored a 1969 Plymouth Roadrunner with a 4-speed Hearst. My 68 Dodge Charger with an automatic 727 tranny, bucket seats, crystal pearl black, it had a 6-pack hood on the hood, which, by the way, the Chargers didn't come with, but it came from some of the other Mopars. We got a 71 Cuda. So I love Dodge and their whole culture, which is let's make some performance cars. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get my head around a car that with an audio system provides that symphony of sound that we get from a Lamborghini 12-cylinder finely tuned engine, or from a big block engine in a Mopar, a Hemi engine with 2-chamber exhaust and 3-inch pipes. I'm not sure yet, so I'm not going to weigh in on that.
You know, the fact that they've taken they pulled the Charger off the market for their ICE vehicle. They pulled the Challenger off the market, and those were the 2-door and 4-door versions of the same car. And now the Charger is coming back as an EV car.
Yeah.
Man, I'm excited to see what that's going to look like. I don't have the long history of the big engine. I love the sound of a true V8, just the rumble.
Mm-hmm.
And going down the freeway and hearing what some of these people try to do with what I like to call rice burners is actually kind of comical, because they just like them to be loud and they sound more like motorcycles than cars.
It can be so irritating. Of course,
they're terribly irritating.
The movies that started that was Fast and Furious, and that was a cool movie. It was inspirational, and it created a whole legion of young guys that wanted to tune their cars. There's one truck that I like, that Dodge Ram, when it's in black. And it takes off and the front end comes up. Of course, they usually run into a telephone pole because they can't see ahead of them with the car being that far out. You've seen those on,
yeah.
But it's that sound. And then, of course, like I said, the Lamborghini. I mean, these are exquisitely tuned vehicles with, enormous amount of mechanical advances in it, which, by the way, are going away soon. I've got a segment here later on. We're going to talk about how many countries are banning ICE vehicles and how soon they'll be doing that, and it's just around the corner.
Yeah, it really is. So I share your opinion, Slangway. I'm pretty impressed with what I've seen overall, and I'm excited for what the future holds.
YouTube, Brian Silver, the best Tesla sales force is the current owners. That's absolutely true. What Tesla did was they multiplied their sales force exponentially by letting the owners sell the cars.
Yep.
I give test drives all the time. He says one friend bought 2 Model Ys after driving mine. His wife was always driving the first one, so he bought a second. There you go.
There you go. If the Model Y had been the price that it is now at the time that I was looking for a second EV, it would have been a no-brainer.
Really? Yeah.
Absolute no-brainer. In fact, when I read over the weekend that Tesla had dropped the price on the Model X down to below $80,000 in order to get the SUV EV credit, I was like, oh, I'm jealous, because that's been my wife's dream car for years.
Yeah. Number 5, the fifth reason that Tesla has revolutionized the auto industry, and this heading is it has accelerated the advancement of self-driving cars. Those of you that have been around a while, The concept of a self-driving car was way too bizarre in the last century for everyone or for anyone to consider it a reality.
Right.
And, then we got things like parking assist and cameras that would actually guide you when you're backing into a parking spot. And we began to realize that these cars are getting smarter. According to Elon, by the end of this year, full self-driving, he claims, is going to be a reality. The type full self-driving where you take your hands off the wheel and just let the car do its thing.
I think he said that now for a couple years in a row, though. So
yeah, that's true.
We'll see if it happens.
Yeah. But think about how the world will change once we have full self-driving cars. You can actually employ your car and send it out there to generate revenue, robo-taxis.
Yeah.
While you're sleeping, this thing could be out running DoorDash. It could be picking people up at the airport in the middle of the night and actually help you make car payments. So then another one. Tesla brought us giant screens as infotainment systems. Jesse, can you bring up a picture? It is the Tesla or the Roadster screen. And this isn't the first time that Tesla gave us a screen in a car. And I'm sure there are other cars that have done that. But just to show you the change from the first generation Tesla Roadster, which is about a 2.5 by 3 inch screen, LCD touchscreen in the Roadster, to what came later with the Model S, which is a 17-inch flat screen. And of course, they now tied it to the internet. You had all kinds of information about the car that was available to you. And it kind of started with the Roadster. The Roadster actually has a hidden section where with a special password, you can access information about what's going on in the car. It's sniffing CAN signals, basically, and it can give you a lot of information. We use it for troubleshooting all the time. But they stayed with that screen, that 17-inch screen. There's even an emergence of a larger display, like the 56-inch hyperscreen in the Mercedes EQS, which spans the entire cabin width. So they say, regardless of which side of the debate you're on, huge screens in the middle of a car are here to stay. And almost every other new EV incorporates one of these in some way.
And it has come out of the EV space and is starting to make inroads into the ICE space as well. Mm-hmm. More and more of these ICE vehicles, if you look at the pickup trucks especially, that pickup truck space, they have an infotainment screen in the middle of it that is becoming a significant part of that vehicle. I've even seen one vehicle that took it a step further, and this was an electric vehicle. I don't remember the brand off the top of my head. They decided to take the instrument cluster and make it the top 3 inches of the center console.
Okay.
So you don't have an instrument cluster. All you have is that big 17-inch screen, or in their case, almost a 20-inch screen.
Right.
It's here to stay. It's what's going to happen to JVC and Alpine and all of these other stereo manufacturers? What's going to happen to them? There is no more aftermarket for stereos.
Interesting. Yes. Yeah.
Have you not thought of that before?
It's all streaming nowadays, and
it's all streaming. It's all Bluetooth, and so all you need. And if your auto manufacturer is putting 26 speakers into the car and professionally balancing those speakers before they leave what do you need? I mean, these audio systems are about as high end as you're going to find in the third-party marketplace. There will be no more need for the big high wattage subwoofer systems because they'll already exist.
Yeah. Again, this gets me into my next, my prediction that it's an exciting time to be alive. My wife and I went looking for a refrigerator about 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. And even refrigerators have big flat screens on them now.
Oh, yeah.
Have you noticed that?
I have.
Tells you everything about your food and the temperatures, and you can control things.
My brother and sister-in-law have one of those refrigerators with the big touch screen on it, and they'll put the grocery list out. And of course, when they're at the grocery store, they get a notification from the refrigerator, you need milk or you need eggs.
How cool is that? So number 7 on this list, Tesla has popularized the online ordering of cars. Yes, despite NADA, despite some detractors, and of course frustrated auto dealers, which we have a video. We don't know if they're going to survive. But that's how disruptions occur. They have to adapt is the bottom line. They're going to have to evolve, and if they can't, they will go extinct, which is the order of business in nature.
One of the things that I saw through the most recent car buying experience I had, I went to Volvo. They do run through a dealer network. The biggest division in their dealer network was the internet sales division.
Really?
Most of the people that come to them are coming to them by researching the car online, figuring out what they want, and simply calling the dealer to say, do you have X with Y features in it, or do I need to order it from you?
Sure.
And they'll say, you know what? Come on down. You're going to have to order it from us. We'll make sure that the order is ready when you get here. Although it's a dealer, this was a place that followed more the mold of let's get you a car and just order it than we're going to try to sell you what's on our lot.
Beginning to evolve, in other words.
Beginning to evolve. That's right.
All right. Number 8. It has brought, now this is Tesla again. Tesla has brought us the concept of gigafactories. Now, let me describe to you where the term gigafactory originally came from, because it's a new term these days. The term gigafactory was initially reserved for a Tesla battery production facility, and since they were going to produce so many batteries that the collective energy capacity of those units would equal billions or giga, they evolved into much more now, with Giga Texas already churning out Model Ys and more models planned in the future. And suddenly, everybody is beginning to call large factories gigafactories. So that seems to be a phrase that Tesla coined. Now, Tesla currently operates 5 gigafactories, 3 in the U.S., 1 in China, and one in Germany. And of course, there are some under construction now.
Yes, we have Monterrey, Mexico, that's under construction. I know that they're talking about either Spain or India as a place for construction, but nothing has been decided on that. And they're continuing to work on expanding, especially over in Nevada.
And these are massive compared to what used to be built. These are massive square footage type operations, well beyond what the traditional production facilities used to look like.
Yep. We have a couple questions that have come in as well. T. Barrera has a great comment on YouTube. He says, the racers think they're faster because they have baloney pipe exhaust.
You know, my son had a 250 Kawasaki, a Kawasaki motorcycle when he was in high school, and there were limits as to how much CCs you could have in Arizona, at least. So 250 was a limit. Well, you know, he wanted to tune his 250 Kawasaki. So one day we put a straight pipe on it. It was just raspy and loud. So my wife had just finished a can of Folgers coffee. We ended up drilling a hole in that and then mounting that on that pipe, and he truly had a coffee can muffler at that point. And it was more of a gag than it was anything else, because it didn't improve the audio much at all.
Oh, that's funny.
YouTube Slangway in Germany says, I know it has nothing to do with essentials, but I have to ask you, what is your experience with German cars, regardless of whether it is a V8 or electric? Well, my take on German cars, and we have a video that we did a year or so ago, people were complaining about these new EV manufacturers. They have panel gaps. They don't have great paint. The interiors oftentimes are loose. And my comment to them was, look, folks, if you want a car that is perfect, it doesn't have any of these issues, you need to go buy a German car. These folks have had decades to perfect their craft. They have quality control processes that are superior to some of these new emerging EV manufacturers, and the Japanese cars, by the way, as well. You know, decades of experience. But in the meantime, if you consider the fact that we have to get fossil fuel burners off the road, and that's the priority, rather than whether your paint is absolutely perfect or your panel gap is off by a micron of an inch, then that becomes far more important. But my take on German cars, exquisitely engineered, and it's not just your cars, guys. I was in the audio business for years. A dual turntable is a record-playing type turntable, over-engineered to the hilt, but exquisitely engineered, you know? So, yeah, very impressed with the products that the Germans make because their attention to detail and their focus on quality is some of the highest in the world.
Well, and I'm sure it doesn't hurt that about half your childhood is spent down in southern Germany as well.
Yeah. Yep.
So Niles has a comment for us on YouTube as well. He says, I believe self-driving cars will never be popular, even if it works. The full self-driving take rate has dropped to below 7%. People like to drive, and they don't like strangers in their cars. It will be a slow, drawn-out flop. Self-driving may well become a niche, though, for taxis and minibuses, but not mainstream is my guess.
So my take on that, Niles, is this generation, you're absolutely right. We're still going to want to type. We're still going to want to drive our cars. But there's a generation coming that is not going to be able to drive cars at some point in the future.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Well, even the kids nowadays, they have a difficult time driving a standard car. You know, you've got clutch action, you've got gears you have to shift and all that. I think it's a generational thing, and eventually, you know, all of these things will go away, and that generation won't be able to even drive.
I know people who I work with who have, you know, their spouses that don't drive, who have kids that are not interested in getting a license, even though they're well past that license age. Even my kids were, hey, I'm 15 years, 6 months, and a day. I want to go out and start getting my permit. You know, my son was so upset because his birthday when he could get his license was a Saturday, and he could not wait those 2 days. He was so upset. So, but that's really that's not the world today. It's moving away from that. So I get where you're coming from, Niles. Especially here in the United States, where we have such a driving culture. I think that's going to be more than 6 or 7% in the future, though, where there are going to be people that don't want to drive and don't care about it.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's also a security thing, and you know, here in this country, we're huge on independent security, right? Taking care of one's own self. You know, if we have people who are in cars but don't know how to drive them, and you know something happens with the software, or you know you're in a situation where you have to drive, what's that going to do for your personal security? That's going to throw it into jeopardy,
Yeah, good
right? We
point.
have this whole thing at Burning Man that's happening right now, where all those cars are stuck, not for lack of drivers, but because of road conditions, right? And we can imagine a mass event where you know something happens with the software, or there's some kind of electrical interference, you know, like a what's it called, a geostorm or whatever it's called.
Yeah, an
right?
EMF strike. Yes.
Yeah, an EMF strike, and you know something happens to where you need to drive, and we're gonna have people stranded. So, you know, I'm with Niles on this one. I don't think it's gonna become a massive thing to where we depend upon it, because we can't. I don't think that's safe.
Yeah. Now, something just occurred to me. You know, the most difficult thing that you're going to end up doing with your parents at some point in time is taking their car keys away.
Yeah.
I mean, how many families have you heard that that's been a traumatic experience?
Yeah.
Alters the relationship many times. In this case, it doesn't matter anymore. They put their own keys down because they're able to get someplace else, you know, without having to depend on memory and maps and all of that. It just takes them where they need to go.
Where they're going to end up being much more independent than they would have been otherwise, because something else can drive for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. George on YouTube is here. He says, good morning, guys. Waves to us and says, it's nice that you guys have matched your shirts again to the background. Not intentional, George.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing how subconsciously it just happens each time?
I actually thought about this shirt and thought, I'm going to go against wearing a red shirt because Last time we had a red background, and I don't want to match the background, and then here we are. Oh, well. He says, I already hit the like button. Unlike the 30-something people that are secretly watching, hit that like button, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Silver, he says, okay, Rich, he liked. Okay, push the like button. Thank you, Brian. Mark James, he says, don't knock it until you try it. So much of the drive is boring or tedious. FSD is sweet.
I'd like to try full self-driving at some point in my life.
Do you think that you're going to be able to get past it and actually go in the back seat and read a book while the car's driving itself? I mean, there's a confidence level there that's,
I don't know.
yeah, trust level. I guess.
I don't know. For me, part of the thing is I love driving.
Yeah,
I just
there you
love
go.
driving. But if you talk to my wife, if you talk to my daughter, they hate it.
Yeah.
They can't stand to drive, and they're the kind of people that if they could if they could get in the car, tell the car I want to go here, and then do their own thing for a half hour while the car goes there, they would be completely happy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I would or not.
All right, Richard says, you know how to confuse a full self-driving car with AI? Instructed to go for donuts. And then George chimes in, it's time for Richard Sunglass Infomercial. What do you think, Richard?
Well, since you asked, I happen to have all 3 pairs of my sunglasses on right now. You know, if only there were a place where I could put them. Would you look at that sunglass holder? We are selling these for $79.99 on the Gruber Motor Company website. You can buy one if you just have 1 pair of sunglasses, or you can buy a second one if you've got 2, or 3. You got a third. Now I can't remove these, but you get the point. If you use code Richard, you get 10% off. Go check them out.
I'm surprised Aaron didn't chime in at that point. I think he's given up. Yeah, Richard definitely is.
I got sucked into the questions.
Okay. You know, speaking of that, Sunday, Jesse and I were here, and there were more questions for that AI podcast than I think we've had before. But a few times I tried to engage him in questions, and there was just dead silence over there. He was just furiously typing, completely oblivious to anything around him.
This is the most views on an AI podcast that we've ever had.
Really? Okay, so it's growing.
I like what Nolver53 says on YouTube. I prefer to have control over a 2,000-pound missile on the highway.
Yeah.
There you go. Humanity will eventually forget how to do the basics. I love driving.
Well, there you go. And, you know, I'm the same way. That's why I've owned race cars, you know.
Yeah.
I love the thrill of feeling the road. And
Well, there's a problem with that, though. He might be capable of handling a 2,000-pound missile. There are other people, if given the same freedom, that cannot control it well and kill people.
I see him on the road all the time.
Yeah.
All right. So 9, they say Tesla has promoted direct customer sales more than dealerships. And they have actually streamlined the experience of buying a car far more than dealerships could to the company's website, where the customers can personalize their vehicle. And, you know, you can actually see the vehicle by simply clicking on some things. You see a different color wheel set, different color car, interior. You can't do that at a dealership. If they have enough cars for you to go sample and look at, then it's probably possible, but it's time consuming. Here, with just a click of a button, you can see all of this.
Right.
And they can personalize their vehicles, order it online.
You know, this reminds me of years back when there were the browser wars and Microsoft was going to take over the world and everything was Windows, and you know, Microsoft had Windows and Microsoft had Office, and there was, you know, Firefox was trying but failing, and Google came out and they said, you know, we're going to take a look at the underlying need that the person has. The person has a need to be able to interface with their computer. So why don't let's take a look at that interfaces. We need some sort of an email program. They need some sort of a word processing program. They need some sort of spreadsheet program. What if we built something that could run on our browser remotely, and then it doesn't matter what kind of computer you have. It doesn't matter what kind of operating system you have. they changed the game. They fulfilled the consumer's need in a way that completely bypassed all of tradition. And you have Google Sheets, and you have Google Docs, and you have Gmail, and so on and so forth. And it doesn't matter if you're on a Macintosh, if you're on a Windows computer, if you're on a Linux computer, if you're on a telephone on Android,
Right.
you have access to all these things. Google changed the perspective of the people who were out there trying to consume content. Tesla has done exactly the same thing. People want to see cars and features and colors and what's possible much more than they want to go on a test drive.
Mm-hmm.
And by Tesla meeting the needs of the consumers in a non-traditional way, they have simply bypassed, in most cases, the need for a dealership.
Mm-hmm.
And then those people who do get onto the test drives and want to see exactly what it's going to feel like, okay, go down to the mall and do a test drive.
Right.
They might not even do anything more than get your first name, and they'll say, okay, well, Jim, why don't you go on down and let's get you set up, and you do your test drive. You're all done. They're like, how'd you like that? Oh man, that was great.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. And that's it. That's all they do.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Couple more questions coming in here. YouTube, JK says, I thought Lucid can only charge at 50 kW on a DCFC.
I'm not sure what DCFC stands for right offhand.
DC fast charge.
Oh, that's not true.
No?
As far as I know,
50 kW?
Lucid is able to charge much faster than 50 kilowatts.
Okay.
Because the first generation Tesla charger, supercharger, is a 75 kilowatt charger. That's what the 2012, 2013 Teslas charge on. That would mean that it would take you for a Lucid Air, the long range, it would take 2 hours of fast charging.
Yeah,
for them
that is slow. Yeah.
At 50 kilowatts for them to get up to their full range, because 75 kilowatts equates to usually about 200 to 250 miles in an hour. And if you have a 500-mile range, so something seems off with that. I know that's just my opinion. I'm not researched, but I don't think that sounds right.
Yeah. Well, we'd love to hear your justifications for that, JK.
Yeah.
YouTube, Niles is back. He says, well, soon as the youngsters can afford a modern EV, then that becomes their pride. Yeah, young people that get their cars, they trick them out and tune them, and yeah. We will see, he says. To me, it is stressful to have to watch it if FSD behaves while relaxing to drive myself.
Oh, I totally agree. That's, yeah. TikTok, Honk Maven 1940 says, how accurate is Tesla at self-driving?
And not perfect yet.
They've got a ways to go, I think.
Instagram, Ashfaka says, hey, how are you? Thank you for joining us. YouTube, Chris Lowe says, why does Tesla have a glass roof? I prefer zero light via cabin ceiling. My kingdom for quiet and dark car interior. Thank you in advance. Well, of course, you get both options. You can get the glass top, and you can get the hard top.
One thing that you might try, we have tried, because we've tried here on the car that the company has given me to drive. I have a Model S with the sunroof, with the glass top roof. We went ahead and went to a tinting company and had them put that dark limo tint that also it's in this case was a ceramic tint, so it reduces the heat that radiates down from the glass top, as well as makes it dark enough so that you pretty much don't notice that it's dark. That has been one of the coolest things that we've done to the car that I drive, and it's something that Gruber Motors helps. Will use my car on occasion to help sell that add-on to people, that upgrade to people.
So the 10th item that they list here, how has Tesla changed the automotive world? Well, they say it has blurred the line between a normal car and a supercar. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
It used to be that four-door grocery getter sedans, as I call them, were, fairly slow, unresponsive beasts. And if you had a 0 to 60 in 7 seconds, that was probably impressive. What Tesla did, starting with the Model S, they took full advantage of a concept in a three-phase AC induction motor, which is instant horsepower and instant torque. Your internal combustion engines, you have to spool to a certain RPM level to reach their power curve. In fact, if you look at the graph, it looks exactly like this. And you're up there toward the upper range of your RPMs, or allowable RPMs, when you get your full horsepower and full torque. Well, these Teslas, the first ones that came out, and let me read you this. Most people have a very specific concept of a supercar in mind, often involving sleek, exotic car that spits fire, goes fast, and costs an arm and a leg. Bingo.
Mm-hmm.
Enter the Model S Plaid, an EV that looks as inconspicuous as a normal Model S with its 4 doors and minimalistic design, but when you put your foot down, the beast is unleashed. Since the 1,020 horsepower it packs allows it to go from 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds. Now, what this means, they say, is now your sedan can outrun almost all fancy supercars and that are a lot more expensive than the Model S. Some people still won't consider it a supercar, but the Model S Plaid is definitely dealing in superlatives, and others like the Lucid Air Sapphire have joined the party in this new segment of the market as well, leaving others in the dust. And for those of you that have trouble grasping this, look at YouTube. Look at the guys that are taking these grocery getter Plaid cars to the quarter-mile strip. And they're embarrassing guys that have spent all kinds of money, gotten tubbed rear ends and Mickey Thompson slicks and cammed engines and superchargers and nitrous oxide conversions, and they're blowing them away.
Yeah.
Subs 10-second quarter-mile runs for a car that you can then drive to the grocery store and literally get your groceries and take the kids and the pets with you.
It's hard to imagine, but if all you have to do is go back 10 years, 2013. If you have a car that has a sub 5 second 0 to 60 time, you are driving a really fast car.
Well, they were top fuel dragsters.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5-second cars. And if you got under 11 seconds in your car, they sent you home and said, don't come back until you put a roll cage in your car.
Yeah, exactly. On the drag strip, if you're sub 11, you're right. They would say you are unsafe to drive this car. And now, how
are you going to put a roll cage into a Tesla Model S? And who would?
Yeah.
No one,
Yeah, who
so
would?
they now allow these cars on the drag strip, even though they're getting sub 11 second quarter mile.
Well,
slips.
and even things like the Ford Lightning pickup truck.
Yeah.
It's got a 0 to 60 down around 4.4 seconds.
For a truck.
It's a pickup truck, for goodness sakes. They're not going to take that to the drag strip. You're more likely to take it out camping.
Right.
And it's a thing.
And if you had tools and stuff in the back of the bed, they would probably fly out if you tried to do a 0 to 60 in 4 seconds or whatever.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, Tesla definitely put these types of EVs on the map with that kind of performance. And it wasn't anything they necessarily engineered into the cars. It's the characteristic of a 3-phase AC induction motor. They're highly efficient, and the torque and the horsepower curve are there the instant you blip that throttle. When I was driving my P90D Ludicrous, it's always tempting at a red light when you get one of those brightly neon crotch rockets that are, revving their engine with their brightly colored leathers, and the light turns green. And I usually do this in a safe environment, no side axis and, no one on the road. But I blow them away. The first 100 feet of asphalt, I own it, because unlike them that have one tire on the asphalt, I have 4 tires with all-wheel drive, and instant torque and horsepower. So I usually see them in my side view mirror, popping wheelies, trying to keep up with me with their front end in the air. After that, of course, they zip by me, and if they're willing to do 150 miles an hour in a residential neighborhood, that's not me.
Yeah.
Off the line, I proved the point. I don't have to exceed the speed limit at that point.
To me, the one of the more fun things that I do, and I have a 100D, so it's a dual motor, but it's not a performance, it's not a ludicrous, it's nothing like that. And to watch these pickup trucks that'll inch forward, and then I'll put down like half throttle. I won't even try to beat them.
Don't even try.
I'm just trying to keep up with them, and I'm at half throttle, and you can tell based on the amount of exhaust that's coming out the back end of these things, they are all out trying to beat me, and I'm like,
And the tires are squealing and all that.
all kinds of fun stuff.
YouTube, George says, watch the movie Demolition Man. Part of the movie is self-driving cars driving around, and the Sylvester Stallone drives a 1970 Oldsmobile. And he drives them around them all, he's saying. It's a cool car movie. Yeah, you had mentioned that before, George. That sounds like one that we need to watch, or I need to watch.
Definitely. And then Niles makes a recommendation to George as well. Says, The Devil at Your Heels on YouTube. It shows how far one can go with willpower.
Oh, the willpower. Okay.
Go ahead.
YouTube, T. Barrera. He says, BMW was yesterday's yuppie mobile. Today it's Tesla. Boy, you got that right.
Yeah, definitely.
So I don't know about anybody else, but I had to look that up. I've
Really?
been called a yuppie in one of the shorts that we had. So, and I didn't really think too much of it, but it's come up the second time. So it means young urban professional.
Oh, we have all of these. There was hippies in the 60s. Then came the yuppies. Then came the hipsters, I think, along the way somewhere. Then we've got millennials. We have all these labels for different age groups.
Have you guys looked up a picture of the stereotypical yuppie?
I did. It looked like a hipster, essentially.
Yeah. Wow. I'm old. Richard doesn't know what a yuppie is.
I don't know. We'll have to bring that up here at some point. It sounds like.
It sounds like it. On George on YouTube says, did Mark notice how clean the parking lot was this morning? Mr. Pete cleaned it on Sunday.
My first reaction to that was, how did he know that I spent 2.5 hours Sunday morning blowing out the parking lot in preparation for our 3 Chinese roadsters arriving? And I had no idea it would take that long, but you're doing like a foot at a time. And it's both rocks and leaves and debris and all that. We talked about it in the AI podcast, and George was there. Thank you for giving me credit for that, George. Appreciate it.
George, I did not notice because that parking lot's the Gruber Motors lot, and we didn't have our morning meeting today.
That's right.
Our morning meetings are Monday, Wednesday, Fridays.
So I got to tell you, Nick shows up. He's sitting there in a seat. There's no one else there. And I said, Nick, hey, how you doing? What are you doing here? He says, well, I'm here for the meeting. I says, Nick, it's Tuesday. There is no meeting. He goes, he went back.
He actually came to me afterwards. He's like, I'm so messed up in my schedule.
Yeah. TikTok, Van Goatwagon, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. What is the best aftermarket product for your Tesla? The best aftermarket product. Come on, guys. We have a lot of Teslas here.
I tell you what, to me, the best aftermarket product that I've seen so far are those superior shocks that you guys are putting down on the Roadsters by Intrax.
Okay.
That is absolutely an amazing product. The more I researched it and found out about it, the more I was just like, wow, that is so cool.
Coming soon. We got some beta Model S shocks coming here shortly. And that may be one of the cool aftermarket products. We've got adjustable toe links, for example. That's another product that some people like.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it speaks to the manufacturer's focus on excellence. And there really isn't a lot that you can do to a Model S to improve it. I mean, it's a pretty decent car right from the get-go. Now, there are things that we do, like we increase the beefiness of the motor mounts. If you're an aggressive driver and you like to experience the torque and horsepower, there may come a time when the little aluminum motor mounts in the back, on the back motor, will crack or snap. And what we do is repair those with a thicker material, and we put gussets in to strengthen them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's probably, I would say, our best shot at this point is our suspension upgrades.
Yeah, I that's my favorite one anyway. Bfish62 on TikTok says, "I'm happy to see a company in Goodyear is recycling EV batteries and is very environmentally sound."
I don't know about them. I'd love to hear more about that. In Goodyear, okay, not too far from here.
Yeah, we'll have to take a look. I know that that's going to be down around where Nicola is, so
Right.
we'll find out, and we'll get back to you guys with more info.
George says, as for glass sunroofs, he said that Tesla or I guess aftermarket, they also make a cover that installs for inside. It covers the roof windows and prevents sunlight from coming through.
Oh, that'd be a kind of a cool product. Yeah.
Yeah. Van Goatwagon says, "You guys are the Hoonigans." Yeah, we've had him on our podcast, actually. Thank you.
Thank you.
T. Barrera, Pete went down the rabbit hole. Yeah, I do that from time to time, but it's fun.
It's a lot of fun to see where it goes.
So I've got an Elon Musk quote, and he's talking about the Cybertruck. Popular topic, by the way, our Sandy Munro video, most recent podcast. This morning, it was just shy of 100,000 views, and that's on their small podcast channel where they only have 8,000 subscribers. Probably one of their more productive or more active podcasts. But it was centered on the Cybertruck. So it is a popular topic. Here's what Elon says about the Cybertruck. He says, "Due to the nature of the Cybertruck, which is made of bright metal with mostly straight edges, any dimensional variations show up like a sore thumb. All parts for this vehicle, whether internal or from suppliers, need to be designed and built to sub-10 micron accuracy." That's pretty darn tight.
Yeah.
He says that means that all part dimensions need to be to the third decimal place in millimeters, and tolerances need to be specified in single-digit microns. He says if Lego and soda cans, which are very low cost, can do it, so can we. And his phrase is, "Precision predicates perfectionism." So there's the edict from Elon. Now, you had some thoughts on that.
I do have some thoughts. The thing on the 10 microns, that sounds like an incredibly small measurement that's like basically perfection. And you would think, okay, well, this is impossible. You're never going to build a car down to a 10 micron specification. Well, first, he's not asking for cars to be built down to a 10 micron variance. He's asking for the parts to be made down to a 10 micron variance. That is not too much to ask, in my opinion. Machine shops that are making these parts, if they're working in aerospace, which of course Elon owns SpaceX, 10 microns is not really going to be that hard of a specification to meet. The aerospace industry, whether it's aeronautics and airplanes, or the space industry with places like SpaceX, routinely have to make parts down to tolerances that are 10 microns or less, I believe. So to take that and say we need that on an automobile, I think the only reason that it hasn't been widely done in the past is economics. And yet, with the type of automation that's out there, I don't think it's that unreasonable of an ask. As much as it seems strange on its surface.
Niles with YouTube says the movie is about a Canadian stuntman that wanted to launch a rocket-driven Ford Lincoln across the St. Lawrence River to land on the American side about 1 mile away. That's quite a feat if you think about it, without rocket thrusters and wings.
Yeah, that sounds like an interesting movie. We'll look that one up on YouTube. Niles also asked me a question. He says, "Mark, did you ever look into why no one makes energy regenerating shocks? I have done some looking into why that's not happening very much yet. I think it's more a matter that nobody has brought that to market yet than anything else. The concept is definitely sound, and I did see some stuff in the press fairly recently about companies that are trying to do exactly that, develop a shock that while it's bouncing, while it's bouncing up and down, it's taking that energy that that the car is dissipating because of the roughness of the road and converting that back into electricity.
Cool concept, and maybe the question or the issue is not enough energy is generated in that, but it's definitely worth pursuing.
It's definitely worth pursuing, and the some of the initial research shows that the shocks and the amount of energy that they could generate, especially if you're going over a rougher road, might be equivalent to the amount of energy that's getting generated through regenerative braking when you slow down.
Interesting. By the way, tomorrow's session, the Tesla Roadster session, also at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, is going to deal with suspension issues in the Roadster, and we'll be bringing this back up. This is the front shock from a Tesla Roadster. There's a gas canister here. It mounts like this, and what we're finding is this steel braided hose is a bit close to the upper control arm. So what we've asked the manufacturer to do is to either put this exit here off to the side a bit. They came back with even a better idea. They are going to thread this and put a banjo nut here, which then allows us to orient this in either this direction or that direction, so that the shock now becomes universal for the front and the front right and left.
Oh, that's incredible.
Which is, of course, what you have by having it come out at 90 degrees like this. But if you offset it, now you've suddenly created a problem where you have to have, a different
A
shock.
left or a right, yeah.
So we'll be talking about that tomorrow. This next order that's coming in, that they're already working on, is going to have an adjustable portion here, which then allows us to get this hose away from the upper control arm completely.
George on YouTube says the best add-on product is the Gruber sunglasses case that Rich promotes.
Well, thank
That's
you.
right. He's exactly right.
Thank you, George, very much. Crunch to Grace Hopper, number 21, like only, from Newport Beach, SoCal, catching up from way 70 minutes plus back. Never too late to replay, but still time to smash that thumb, y'all. So good, love having the likes on here. Thank you, guys.
So, Jesse, we got a picture we can bring up. It is the big oil picture. This one was kind of interesting and also timely. Apparently, there is a billboard or a series of billboards that are beginning to emerge. This particular one is from Texas. And essentially what it says is, brought to you by Big Oil, and what's on everybody's mind in the U.S. right now is this heat wave that we're having, the drought and the fires, and and then you had done some research. You were saying that this actually is a fairly large organization, and these may not be isolated and may be part of a movement.
Yeah, it's more of a political movement than anything. It's in Austin. It's also here in Phoenix. Don't be surprised if you see one of these popping up in Phoenix. They're putting billboards in several places across the southern U.S. Fossil Free Media, I did a little bit of looking up and found out that they're much more of a political organization than they are just a climate organization. They appear to be aligned with some of the most liberal members of Congress. The message resonates because it's been as hot a summer as we've had in memory out there. And so personally, my take, I'm all for pushing for the transition to EVs. I like the idea. I think that's our future is electric vehicles. And I think it's going to be a good thing for us and for our environment. This particular group seems to be very much the environmental activist, very extreme type of group. For example, they are pushing for banning fossil fuels outright as soon as they think it would be practicable. It resonates with me in the same way that the environmentalists who are for banning human births because humans harm the environment
Okay.
It seems to be a fairly extreme environmentalist group that's putting these out. They do have a stated goal of ending production of all fossil fuels. Their ideal, I think, would be like in 10 years or so. I'm all for the idea of transitioning more to electric vehicles, but I don't think my views are quite that extreme. So I have a little bit of a hard time supporting this group in its entirety that way.
As far as the public is concerned, though, I find it encouraging that they're making a cause-effect relationship. And of course, these billboards, they're going to get in your subconscious. You're going to see it when you go to work every morning if there's one on your route.
Yeah.
And eventually it's going to, like most movements, gain some momentum.
I think so too. And, that's, I agree with the concept behind it, that there is such an amount of heat that's going out there that if you look back in the last 100 years, the hottest 20 summers over the last 100 years have been in the last 30. So there's what we have is much more than just a one-off. It's definitely a trend toward higher temperatures. And if we can do something that would help slow that down or leave us or our kids or grandkids with a better environment than what we had when we were growing up, I'm all for that.
YouTube, Charles Cole joined us. He says, I worked in Goodyear doing passenger to freight conversions for FedEx in 1995. Well, welcome. Thanks for joining us. And then George points out, has a question. He says, why don't stock gas Lotus struts or shocks fit the Roadster, the Tesla Roadster? Isn't it the same body and suspension? Actually, George, it looks the same, but only 7% of a Tesla Roadster is original Lotus Elise. The weight distribution is substantially different when they put a 1,000-pound battery pack behind the seats. So your spring rates are quite a bit different. And that's why a lot of the Lotus parts just simply won't work in a Tesla Roadster. Some of the suspension parts do, like the control arms, for example, the brake calipers. But that's the reason that you need to have special shocks for the Tesla Roadster. And our team has been working on this for a year, dialing in the correct spring rates. In fact, one of our engineers actually has a shock dyno that he built himself. It's a dynamometer that actually measures the spring rates on shocks, and we carefully analyzed the original Bilstein shocks, looked at those specifications, and then some of the product out there in the marketplace, and came up with a package that is perfect for the Roadster.
Yeah, and I again would want to call out our friends over in Germany that helped with Intrax on the design of these particular shocks for this Roadster. And the name is
Mars Orbiter, Conrad Buck.
Yes. Thank you. Because Conrad and his team helped Intrax do the initial development on these shocks. We did not know that when we ordered and got our first group of shocks in, that they had done a lot of the legwork for us up front.
And yeah, the history on the company that we're currently using for shocks is a 50-year-long custom shock effort that has been going on in the Netherlands for 5 decades.
Yes.
Extraordinarily experienced. There's a YouTube video, we should probably post that at some point, that shows their facility. And like some of the European facilities, they are works of art, just absolutely organized, clean, well-kept, very professional. Boy, a bunch of questions coming in. He says, Jesse is going to sound the alarm soon, 1 hour and a half.
Yep, we're already over, so.
We're already over. Yeah.
FYI. Thanks, George.
George also says, get rid of gas. Should just be diesel or electric. All right, I don't know about diesel, but I'll go with electric.
Well, diesel happens to have a lot more energy per gallon than gasoline does, so I could understand the logic behind that. But it's I'm more for electric myself. Niles comes in and says, I'm for saving energy and reducing emissions as much as possible. But for those that don't drive that much, that's done by keeping their old cars for as long as possible and only then getting an EV. Great point, Niles.
Yeah.
He says this is because of the horrible inefficiency of producing new cars. Man, I could not agree with you more. If you have a 2002 beater that gets 15 miles to the gallon, but you're only driving 8,000 miles a year, keeping that car alive longer is going to do more to help your environment potentially than throwing that car away.
George points out that the future of cars will be like Cuba, where they keep old gas cars going forever. Those folks over there actually use house paint, latex paint, to paint their cars. And you've got a lot of 50s Chevys and Fords over there. And but it was because of necessity. With the embargo, they couldn't import or bring in any new cars for a long time.
Right. Richard Flenke on YouTube. Here's a crazy note to end on. And I agree on his crazy note. He says, VinFast stock right now is at $26. It's still worth more than Ford with 3 U.S. employees and 100 units in sales. And I've been kind of tracking VinFast. You know, it's kind of a fun thing that we talk about pre-show. I've been keeping my updates. We talked back on the 17th about this new company, VinFast, went public. They started at 35, they went to 10, and then they went up to 90. And on August 24th, they were up to 45.38 from $37. Over on August 28th, the stock had just peaked at $82.35. They went down $28 to $54.32. So that's 1 week ago. They were at $54.32. As of 9 a.m. this morning, they were about $27. And now in the last hour and a half, they've gone from 27 down to 26. It's an enjoyable watch, and I'm so glad I'm not a VinFast owner.
Yeah, you and me both. All right, we had some other topics that we'll bring over into the Thursday session. And in the meantime, we're running an hour and a half here. Niles has one final comment. He says, well, there have been many diesel beaters. Here they get 60 to 70 miles per gallon. Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that.
Again, thank you for joining us. We're always having fun doing these. And and we've had quite an international audience today. Did you notice that? We should start counting the countries. Yeah,
I did. Noticing, over in Asia, in India, over in Morocco,
Eastern Europe.
Europe. Of course, we have the Netherlands. Probably the only place that I didn't see that we will somewhat frequently get is either New Zealand or Australia. And I would bet that there are some people out there that are watching as well. So see us. We'll be here tomorrow at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard or Pacific Daylight Time for the Roadster Roundtable podcast. Thursday, again, same time. We'll continue on with the topics that we have. Friday is the Gruber Power Services podcast, also at the same time. And then, of course, on Sunday, you and Jesse go down the rabbit hole with the AI podcast.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.